topic, unfortunately, keeps coming up about the role of physical media today. And unfortunately, it's very rarely good news. You know, we've heard that, like, was it like Disney was going to stop selling physical media at all in countries like Australia. We keep hearing about declining numbers. We keep talking about these manufacturers are now getting out of the business. Well, according to a story that's coming out of comicbook.com right now, apparently there are reports saying that there are Targets, which is like one of the largest chain retailers in the world, is actually pulling physical media, at least DVDs and Blu-rays, from certain locations. This is what they had to say. Some Target stores have reportedly stopped selling DVDs, Blu-rays, and CDs in their stores, removing displays in the part of the store where they sell their other physical media like books and vinyl records. This move is not entirely unexpected. The retailer, which had a significant amount of space dedicated to movies and music until 2021 or so, had been reducing the footprint of its disc sales for the last few years. Best Buy recently removed the home video section from their stores, with the only physical media still in most locations being records and video games. Now, Rob, I find it kind of interesting that this story is coming out now when, you know, we've had recent reports of, speaking of Disney putting out some physical media collections and things like that. But it's almost like those are fake hope kind of stories. Like, because every time we actually look at real things like manufacturers ceasing operations of building Blu-ray or DVD players, we hear about entire markets kind of losing out on it. Or now some of the major stores, one of the last bastions of physical media, now maybe taking some steps to reduce that footprint and everything. I mean, it goes back and forth, right? Sometimes we hear something that's a little bit promising, something that just kind of keeps the death knell ringing about physical media. Now, you and I are on two different sides of this, where, like, I am very much a digital streaming guy. You are very much a physical media guy, but we both agree about some of the pros and cons of both of them. And I want everybody to have what makes them happy. But you hear a story like this. Does it surprise you? Do you think this is a larger trend coming? Do you think it's isolated? How do you see it?
I think, unfortunately, the sales of physical media has been dropping 20 to 25% every year. And to me, it's kind of a bummer, because now we've reached a point where home technology is such that it can provide a theatrical-like experience depending on how much you want to spend on your equipment at home. But see, the thing that scares me the most about all of this is if you go just by analytics, all anybody's going to end up putting up on streaming are things people watch.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of our cinematic legacy, I've always said, John, that pop culture has a half-life of 20 years. And you go back 20 years, you think that the people are only going to watch half the movies that were made more than 20 years ago. And you go back 40 years, half of that. And the further you go back, people are less and less and less interested in movies that are old, because they're interested in the pop culture of their day. And there's more movies all the time, getting more new things getting made that people have to keep up with as it is. And I worry about our cinematic legacy, that in our analytics-driven future that we're going to have to all deal with and live in, if no one's watching, say, a black and white Laurel and Hardy movie, eventually it'll disappear.
Right.
And the thing about physical media is it allows people to collect what they like. And a lot of our cult titles, a lot of foreign titles, a lot of great documentaries are being preserved in physical media. And with the loss of physical media, there's going to be a lot of things that aren't available anymore. And that's what I worry about. And as long as our cinematic legacy is preserved, I'm happy about that. But at the end of the day, really, if no one's watching anything, is it worth preserving?
Well, and here's where it really becomes a problem. Whenever this discussion comes up about the decline of physical media and the fact that it is going away, the conversation gets turned to, should it go away? And that's not the topic of this story, is that it is going away.
It is going. Right? No, it's going away.
It doesn't matter where it should or should. Here's one of the things that concerns me the most. And this only really came up for me where I kind of became cognizant of this in the last year or so, because there are people like me who erroneously thought, and I'm a digital guy. I don't collect physical media. I have no interest in collecting. I haven't done it in over a decade. But, you know, there are people like me who thought that one of the great things about streaming is going to be that all this stuff can be online, and it's going to be there, and it's just going to sit on a hard drive. And when I want to access this, I'm going to be able to go out and find. If somebody tells me about this great movie from 1968, before my time, I can go online and find it. But I always thought, okay, so it's not really costing anything. But what we've seen in the last year or two is that the way this model is set up now, Rob, you were afraid if people didn't go watch it would disappear? The problem is the studios don't want people to go watch it, because we've been seeing things like Warner Brothers, Disney, Netflix, others, like just removing content. Why? Because sitting there cost them licensing fees, so it was costing them money. And with residuals now coming into streaming, if people do watch it, it may not be bringing in any new subscribers. It may not be making us any money, but it's costing us money every time somebody watches it. It reminds me of that Vanilla Ice joke that he did in the one Adam Sandler comedy when they said, "Hey man, aren't you rich because of Ice Ice Baby?" He goes, "Nah man, I got to pay $5 every time somebody plays it on a Walkman or something." It's literally a situation where it starts costing the studio money to have it on their streaming service. And so they're just getting rid of it. And guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Vessi. Now, like me, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of Vessi, the shoe that claims to be incredibly comfortable and waterproof on top of that. Well, these claims are really interesting to me because as a Canadian who walked around in a lot of snow, and as somebody who likes to go camping and hiking with his wife on the weekends, there's nothing more uncomfortable and horrible than walking around in wet feet. So after receiving my first pair of Vessis and noticing how incredibly good looking the shoes are and how mind-boggling comfortable and flexible they are, the first thing I did was I took them into the backyard to put it to the supreme waterproof test and dipped my feet in my pool. Guys, my feet were bone dry, and like 20 seconds after having them in the pool and I touched them, the shoes themselves were also bone dry. Guys, seriously, these shoes are stupidly comfortable, they look great, and they absolutely lived up to the claim of being waterproof and keeping my feet dry. I absolutely love my Vessi shoes. So guys, if you want shoes that are good looking, are ridiculously comfortable, and on top of all that waterproof, you need to head to vessi.com/Campea and get yourselves a pair today. Go to vessi.com/Campea and get shoes for your best summer yet. So Rob, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't thing. Like, I agree. Like, physical media is going away. It's going to be streaming, and I prefer streaming. But one of the consequences is going to be that history. That stuff isn't going to live in perpetuity online like it could. But the way the system is set up, where if people don't watch it, it's of no use to the studios. And if people do watch it, but it's not bringing in new subscribers, it's costing the studios money. And pretty soon streaming might just become what was out in the last 5 years. That is a problem. Even as a streaming guy, I got to say that's a problem.
Well, I have to say that Warner Brothers has a division called Warner Archive. And it's overseen by a gentleman named George Feltenstein, who's probably the most knowledgeable person working in Hollywood today about older films, what exists where. Warner Archive this year, every month they've been cranking out incredible discs, restoring their rich history between Warner Brothers and the MGM movies they own. And nobody knows this. Like, Max should have a Warner Archive channel. I think young people, it would be hip to go back and watch like pre-code movies from the 30s, because people are going to be like, oh my God, they don't even know that they're there. And Warner Brothers is doing the Lord's work when it comes, and Warner Archive, their disc rates are incredible. The images they're giving you these things that you might never have seen. And they're very much worth watching, and no one knows they exist. And that's what bothers me, because they're doing it. They're doing this. And I would think that David Zaslav's being like, look what we're doing at Warner Archive. You can see these crazy movies that were made 100 years ago. Nobody's doing it.
Well, but even if David Zaslav did that, would there actually be a flood of people rushing over to watch it?
Well, it's how I think it's how, with like Barbenheimer, you're like, if you advertised it to people about the rich cinematic legacy, because some of those movies are wacky. I mean, you watch me like, oh my God, this is how people were back then. And if you couched it like that, I mean, and the different genres, whether it's film noir or weird comedies or bizarre musicals or Westerns, I mean, there's all this crazy stuff that you could sit in an afternoon and binge and just have a great time. Get high, take an edible.
I can tell you a strange hero to this. It wouldn't be so much that deep in the rabbit hole, but YouTube. Because for years
could
now,
become the archive.
well, years now, you have reactors.
Yes.
And they are watching classic movies. I can't even tell you how. And it's not like, well, they did it. They did. No, I am telling you, every month there's a new reactor coming out, and
Right.
they're rewatching. Yes, a lot of it is franchise, but what happens inevitably is, well, now you got to check out these movies from the 80s. Now you got to see these from the 70s.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to see this. You got to see Casablanca. It gets it on, like, in the zeitgeist.
Yes, I completely.
So I'm not saying it
Well, and
solves the
way
problem, but
YouTube
it
is now,
helps.
Google is now tied in YouTube with what was Google Play, right? So now, like when I buy a lot of movies on the Google Play Store, they're now accessible to me right on YouTube. Like in my YouTube app, I can just open up my movies and watch it. That might become, who would have thought that? That might become the bastion for this. But anyway, guys, we actually got to move on from this. But guys, keep your eyes open on this and see what happens. Will more and more, I mean, they have been shrinking those sections. It is only recent movies you can normally find in there now, but are they going to start disappearing? We'll find out. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget, we have a daily podcast called the John Campea Show podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app of choice. Go and subscribe to it today so it'll be there when you need it.